I would like you to state your name and your designation for the record before we proceed.
My name is Olufemi Bakare. I'm the Group CEO for Fenchurch Group.
All right, so can you give us an overview of Fenchurch Group's activities in the power sector in Nigeria?
Fenchurch Group has a subsidiary, a wholly owned subsidiary called Fenchurch Power. Fenchurch Power, we own and develop independent power plants, and we are the developers and shareholders of a company that owns 8.5 megawatts power plants in Delta State, Asaba. And we also have 25 kilometers underground distribution network in Asaba, Delta State. We have a 3.6 megawatts IPP plant in Ado-Ekiti and an 11 kilometers underground distribution network also in Ado-Ekiti. We're currently developing 8 megawatts for a commercial and industrial client in Ota, Ogun State. We have also in development another 5 megawatts in Owalero in Delta State. So our subsidiary, Fenchurch Power, does this in the power space. We also own a subsidiary called Fenchurch Energy. Fenchurch Energy does a lot of consulting work. And while primarily in the oil and gas space, we also do advisory and consulting work on behalf of financial institutions for power projects. So those are the things that we do primarily in the power space.
What are the most significant challenges facing the power sector in Nigeria today from your own experience?
From my experience, part of the issues faced, funding, is a key issue. Forex, it's a key issue. Funding, because these projects are capital intensive. Forex, because a lot of the equipment that we use for projects have to be imported for the time being, So those are some constraints that we have. Initially, there was a lot of, policy issues, but the government has straightened all that out. And NEC and the government, a lot of work has been done on that side. So policy-wise, all those have been straightened out. We still have a huge infrastructure gap that needs to be plugged, so companies such as ours, and some others are working hard to close that gap. But we just need to have the financial sector right for us to move faster.
I'd like to quickly down to Fenchurch Group itself. So can you discuss any specific obstacles or challenges that your group encountered while implementing power projects and how they were addressed?
Take, for example, when we were doing our Asaba project, that took a long time because I always say that when it comes to these projects, the engineering side of it is about, 40%. But the bulk of it is administrative and regulatory, right? So for a project such as that, we had to get EXCO approval, had to get a House of Assembly ratification of all the agreements. The power purchase agreements had to be negotiated, right of way, building permits, before we then move to the funding. So all that was a lot, for a state that hadn't done one IPP before, there was a lot of red tape and a lot of bottleneck that we had to get around, but all that was done. It took a bit of time, but by constant engaging the right stakeholders, right, we were able to overcome a lot of all those challenges, as it were. Now, when it came to funding, right, there was a major issue, right? And the unique thing with power projects, power is a commodity at the end of the day. And it's one of those ones where you really have to sell it before you start building it. So to get the guarantees, the funding mix, the equity, the debt, all that was a lot. And then political risk, was also there. But again, it's a matter of engaging the stakeholders properly. On one of our projects, I can tell you, we were to get money from a debt fund. For this project in Ogun State, Nigeria, for a commercial client, 8 megawatts, the funders, the infrastructure fund, were asking us, to engage a consultant out of Sweden. When we checked out the consultants, these people who've done projects 800 megawatts, 400 megawatts, 300 megawatts, for us to engage them to work on a project in Nigeria that is just 8 megawatts, it didn't make sense. We said to them, but this doesn't make sense. Who does this? Will I buy a Rolls Royce that I want to use for Uber business? Right? And then when we have expertise, they said, they've checked, we don't have insurance expertise in Nigeria. I said, no, don't give me that. Of course we do. And we found, a good insurance advisor to advise on that project, right? So again, apart from finance, I've also found that there's a lot of lack of expertise in a way. This particular infrastructure fund had an expatriate as the MD, and then the next person in line was in Nigeria that was very junior, who always just sort of acquiesced or agreed to whatever the expatriate was saying, So we had to say, no, that this is not right. You need to have someone that understands the local operating environment, and it's not just cut and paste. So a lot of learning, unlearning, and stakeholder engagement had to be done. But, these are the issues we face. But the more projects we worked on and the more projects the infrastructure fund guys work on, the better, they get at it. Now, the funders that we work with, they understand the projects very well. We also understand how to make the project very bankable. Because it's one thing to have a project, it's another thing for the project to be structured in a manner that it is bankable. So yeah, we're overcoming them. There are always new challenges every day, but we overcome them.
What opportunity do you think are there for growth and development in the power sector in the country?
Huge. There are lots of opportunities. Starting from, of course, there's capacity that is required. We need to have a lot more generating capacity. There needs to be a lot more distribution capacity, right? The national grid, you will always hear it's collapsed, right? There's a lot of stranded power, in some of the NIPP power plants across the country. However, there's something to be said for localized generation, right? And also distribution. But then also in the space of software development, a lot of people now, from our experience, people really don't mind paying for the power they consume, but they want it to be transparent. People want to see and be able to monitor exactly what they are using. So we are seeing an uptick in software companies coming into that space, where on your phone, you can see what you are consuming in real time, which then gives you the opportunity to manage your costs. So there's opportunity there. There's opportunity in equipment supply. There are lots of opportunities in financing. The power space is a massive ecosystem itself, and there are lots of opportunities there. But I can tell you for free that we are seeing a lot of development in the technology space, how technology is now interfacing with power. So if I was advising any young person, I would say look into where technology and power, where they meet.
Yeah. All right. So if really what you said is that with tech, we can fast track any of the challenges that we're facing, which now, in another word, brings about an opportunity in that sector.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So also, we're still talking about the power sector in Nigeria. If you look at over the years, we will be cycling 4,000 megawatts in terms of generation. If it's not above 4,000, it's a little bit below 4,000. And we also have metering issues where, according to NERC, we have 50 million registered customers, but only 5 or 7. I think with 7, there is a 7 million gap in terms of metering to give out to customers. And there's the band A. Some people are okay with it because it's cost reflective. But as I'm saying, if we do not have infrastructure, why is it in bands? So my question now is that what is the country doing wrong or not taking cognizance of in terms of generation and distribution? Already the current Minister of Power has targeted 6,000 megawatts by the end of this year. So all these are what's currently going on in the country. So what are the things that they need to do better?
Well, the minister is doing his best. Understand that there's a lead time for all projects. The minister is working on some very key things at present, that people in the industry know. Take, for example, even this tariff review. The truth of the matter is power, to a large extent, is subsidized in Nigeria, right? And you can't ask for investments to come in, right, and then dictate the price at which people will pay. There's a real mismatch. So by increasing the tariff a bit, then it makes the sector, attractive and ripe for infrastructure for investments. Now, why are we hovering around the 4,000, 4,500? That's a TCN distribution, transmission issue. There's a lot of stranded power in different pockets. There are a lot of big gencos. We have a genco that has a nameplate capacity of 300 megawatts. They can only push out 150 megawatts. So you have the 150 megawatts there, right? And then the other power plants that almost the same thing. So TCN needs to be looked into, which I know the minister is releasing money, they're releasing funding for a lot of the contractors to be able to, wrap up all the jobs they are doing and complete them very quickly. But understand that these projects also can be done overnight. To build a big transmission line, that is 150 or 200 kilometers long, it will traverse a lot of areas, states, terrain. These things are not built overnight. They take time to be built. So while some of that work is still going on, we're now looking, as a country, we're looking at localized generating capacity and distribution. Like I said, take, for example, our recent power project in Ekiti State, right? We constructed on the ground 11-kilometer network around the Ado-Ekiti metropolitan area, complete with its own RMUs, and transformers to be able to distribute the power. Then, having said that, also, we then have to also talk about gas. Gas is a key thing. We have a lot of big power projects across the country that are not getting the required gas supply, which is why the government, again, is doing a brilliant thing by trying to ensure that there's an uptick in gas infrastructure development in the country. For example, our Ekiti plant now, we're using compressed natural gas, which is virtual pipeline. Can you just imagine if there's a pipeline taking gas from Ore to Ekiti State, the multiplier effect of that. So the more we can deepen the penetration of gas around the country, the better. Then also, subsidy in petrol somewhat has been removed. The government is really pushing for compressed natural gas, for vehicles, for transport, right? So that's a good initiative, right? Then let's also talk about where states that now have IPPs. You then have the opportunity to also have e-mobility in those places, So the real challenge is we need to ramp up the development of power projects in the country, and a lot of that is going at present. But it also still depends that it also boils down to funding. How easy is it to access funding? I know BOI are doing a lot that they can do, but for example, like us now, you can't expect us to be collecting money from commercial banks at 30%. How is that going to work? So infrastructure funds have a key role to play in this, but everything, is coming together a bit slowly, but it's coming together. Then customs, that's one part that a lot of people don't talk about. You can have equipment at the ports for a long time, right? So again, we need to have a certain level of efficiency in how goods are coming in and they are being cleared, especially items that are for infrastructure development. That's very important. And the last part is we are all Nigerians. We are all here, right? We also need to be efficient in our use and consumption of energy. You have a street that's been developed for residential. Take, for example, Lekki Phase 1. You have a street or streets that developed in residential. There's a transformer at the beginning of that street. Now, that street is a commercial street. That street now has a nightclub, has a supermarket, it has a restaurant. And how do you expect the transformer that has been put there or sized there to adequately cater for that? So there needs to be some enforcement of building permits, zoning, and planning. So we're all part and parcel of it. So I believe as we infrastructure power developers are doing our bit, the government is doing its bit in terms of policies, Nigerians, we the citizens also need to do our part. That's the only way, that everything works properly. Also, renewables are a big part of getting a lot of power into the system at present. Now, the cost of renewables when it comes to storage, the battery is expensive, right? But as time goes on, if we can have plants in Nigeria that are manufacturing or assembling these batteries, it drives down the cost, but I think we'll get there.
So we need to let's hear from your angle, because like you said, the policy, the regulation, custom, all these are from the government.
Yes.
So how do the private players also now come in to make sure that some of these loads are reduced from the government?
So for example, I think the private sector, are the ones actually leading the charge, right? Take, for example, Fenchurch, Nigeria, Fenchurch Power Nigeria Limited, Utilita, Nigeria Limited, Electron, Nigeria Limited, Viatan, Nigeria Limited. These are private sector power development companies, all operating, all owning independent power plants, right? For example, we have, like I said, 25 kilometers on the ground network somewhere. We have 11 kilometers on the ground network somewhere. Utilita, for example, has on the ground network, same thing with Electron, Viatan, right? So these companies are actually the ones at the forefront pushing that localized generation and distribution narrative. Initially, before, the discourse used to look at companies such as ours as the competition, the enemy, right? So they didn't want companies like ours to operate in their area, right? They thought we were cherry picking their best clients, right? And they didn't have the power to give. So guess who was benefiting? The diesel seller. But now you can see there's a change of mindset. The discos and companies such as ours are working together. They are saying to people like us, come and be my embedded partner, right? And then we can then generate and then cover a wider area, which is fine, which is good. However, if I'm generating power using compressed natural gas, right, you can understand that my tariff will be more than even the band A, but less than diesel, right? If you're doing diesel now, you're doing about what, 430 naira per kilowatt hour, right? So we are much more expensive than the band A, but way cheaper than the diesel. So who are the targets market for us? Large commercial clients. However, that is not to say that we can't put power into the distribution network of a disco. Take, for example, in Ekiti State, so in Ado Ekiti, within the next couple of months, we will be selling a lot of our night load, right, to a lot of hotels along our distribution network. And that is the power they need, really, at night, because that's when they have people in residence, all the air conditioners are on, things like that. And then during the day, we can also sell to some commercial clients along the network. But what we realized is when our plants came on stream, there's been a lot more power going out to the general public because you've taken a huge chunk of people, the state infrastructure facilities, or particular. So it balances out at the end of the day, right? So companies such as ours, private sector people, are the ones leading the charge in the provision and development of power projects in Nigeria. And the government, there's just policy, to make it easier and better. And the more, we work together, the better. The minister did a good thing last year where he conveyed a ministerial retreat, where all stakeholders were invited to come and talk in Abuja. I was there and it was a very good meeting. And we can see how the offshoot of that is states are now allowed to regulate, power in their space. So it's a process. And we're getting there.
From your answer, you talked about how you look to, supplying hotels and people that need it at night, then the commercial entities that need it during the day. So my next question would be that what is your group doing, to positively impact local communities, areas where you probably not see too much of hotels or commercial entities?
So there's a level of CSR that at the company that we do, right? So take, for example, we're developing a power plant in a state. First things first is all the materials used are sourced locally from sand, granite, iron, all sourced from local merchants. Then we recruit all local artisans, right? So there's a level of skills transfer. Now, the plant is operational. During that period, because by the way, we have a wholly owned operations and maintenance subsidiary called Bremen Operations and Maintenance Limited. We go to the universities, we do an interview, we recruit graduates, engineering graduates, citizens from that state, right? We train them, we put them to work on the power plants, right? So that is already, job is also created from that side alone. And then when it comes to the distribution of power, we give to the government-owned schools along the network. They give them power. Take, for example, in Ekiti State, there's a Christ school at the Fadaunsi Junction. They collect power. They're on IPP. They get power from us, right? The teaching hospital, they are getting power. There's something to be said about this school and the teaching hospital. They had a lot of equipment. They had a lot of equipment that they couldn't use because of no power and even good quality power, because the one thing to have power is not to have good quality power. And all those equipments are very sensitive. Then the schools, the MTN, Samsung, some of them had donated computers and this sort of thing, but they all covered with dust because you need power. Even the toilets, the children were not using the toilets because no power for the pumping machine, for water. So all that happens on that level. Then also, there's a scheme that RE has brought where you can connect less privileged areas to also deepen and give access to electricity. And we're talking to RA with regards to that, because everyone should have access to power. Not everybody needs the same level of power, because there are some places that give 24 hours power that they can't pay for it. But everybody should have access to power, and people should, for what they need. The person that has a radio, doesn't have an AC, has a fan, what's it called? Renewables are there. So everybody should have access to power, and we are deeply committed to that drive.
We said you visit schools, have interviews, seminars, and all those stuff that you give them jobs. Hope you visited my old school. That's the Federal University of Technology, Akure.
Is it of my head of my director of technical engineering? It's from Futa.
Nice. So, technology for self-reliance. Very, very important.
It's very important.
So what I would like to know is, how is your group strategizing in tapping into the movement of renewables in the country?
Well, we're doing our best, right, to ensure that we increase and expand our renewable footprint. Predominantly, our power plants are powered by gas at present, which is clean energy, right? But we are now doing a hybrid where we have a certain amount of solar and a certain amount of gas. Take, for example, there's a large industrial client that we're talking to now. They have heavy machines that the startup current is a lot. All right, so what we propose is we'll have a certain amount of gas and a certain amount of solar, right? The solar especially can be used for non-essential load, perimeter lighting, administrative buildings, and things like that, right? And then that's, so they can put a lot of the solar panels on the roofs of the factory. And this is what we're proposing going forward. Remember, you and I met at the Nigerian Business Roundtable,
yes.
And this was part of what we were discussing, right? And there's no power developer in Nigeria now, right, that is not looking at some element of renewable, which is why I had a meeting some months ago with the MD of RE, right, in expanding that renewable footprint of ours, because it's important.
Literally, from our over 30 minutes of conversation, you've talked about collaboration and partnership. You just said that you had a meeting with the MD of RE. So the question now goes beyond the importance of partnership and collaborations for the success of power projects in the country.
It's key. It's important. Partnerships and collaborations, you can't take the risk because a lot of these projects are capital intensive, right? So it's better to share the risk I had a meeting with the MD of a power company yesterday, right? Where we're looking at an asset, they're looking at the same asset. And then we said to each other, look, why don't we do it jointly? You know, we both put money in, we'd also share the risk, you know, we can move faster. You start saying, if you want to go
fast, go alone.
If you want to go very far, you know, you have to work with people, you know. And in these things, who do I see as our stakeholders? Basically, almost everyone. The government is a stakeholder, right? So we interface with government agencies all the time. Financing, all the financiers are stakeholders. You know, Stabic Infrastructure Fund, United Capital, you know, Chapel Hill. These are people we talk to regularly. There are some charlatans out there that are masquerading to be infrastructure fund. You know, they are not. Those ones also, they are looking for business they can grab, you know, and then they run them badly. You also know them. They advise anyone that wants to get into this business, stay away from charlatans, you know, do your due diligence well, right, on people that parade and call themselves infrastructure funds. you know, be very careful, you know, who you get into bed with. But lenders, they are partners. Equipment suppliers, we work a lot with Schneider, we work a lot with Mantrack, right? We work a lot with cable suppliers, you know. So they're all stakeholders, you know, and you have to sort of collaborate with all these people to deliver a good, functional, and efficient project. And last but not the least, the community, the citizens, people in any area where you're operating, they are all partners and collaborators also, because power theft is real, you know, and power vandalization is real, you know. So you need to have people in the community also that you're engaging with regularly, that they know that the success of this project is their success and they are seeing the benefits of it, you know. So those are all the things we see as collaborators, and we work with everyone.
All right. So lastly, before we let you go, what is your vision for the future of our sector in the country, and how does Fenchurch Group fit into that vision?
Now that's a good one. The future for power is bright. The future is access to electricity for everybody. Even if we say access to healthcare, good healthcare, it still runs on electricity. Take, for example, when there was the national one-day strike, right? Ekiti had no issue. The hospitals fully functional, right? Because power was on. So energy security is important. So we see Fenchurch Group, Fenchurch Power, as being an integral part of that development narrative of the power sector in Nigeria, right? We are in talks now. We want to develop a gas pipeline and a gas compression station, right? The idea is to be a fully integrated business. We have our O&M business already. We have our power business. So we're backward integrating into having our own gas business, so we can guarantee supply to our power plants, and guarantee all our clients, you know, solid 95% uptime on all the PPAs we sign, you know, and security. Now, also, the country cannot get industrialized properly without gas, without power. And all these things, you know, are things that we are fully focused on. Now we are fully focused on making the investments. As far as the government creates a good environment, you know, for us, we are here and we're determined, you know. So Fenchurch is here, and we will keep expanding our footprint. We have, you know, we're talking to people like Power Gen, we're talking to people like American Towers, IHS, Ardell, you know, Oando Clean Energy. Basically, we're open to work with everyone and discussing with everyone, right, to be part of that development narrative in the power sector in Nigeria.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thanks.
It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes.